So if anyone has any questions, you want to say it out or whatever you like. Okay, focus.
Yeah. So, what are your opinions on paying upfront extra for buying something? Let me take an example. Let's say I'm buying something for $5,000. I don't have 5,000. I have $5,000, but they want me to pay it on interest, like monthly installments. So can I pay 6,000 upfront and just buy that 5,000?
Okay.
5,000 worth of things.
Really good question. So the brother's saying, if I can buy something for $5,000 now, and I don't have that money, and they give me an option to buy it for $6,000, for example, by paying it in installments over a year, over 2 years, the majority of scholars said this is permissible. It's not riba. Why? Because riba has to do with loaning out currency. If you're buying a car over a period of time, and you're only dealing with the seller, we're not talking about the bank loaning you money for the car now. You're buying a car from a seller, and they're saying, okay, this car is $30,000, but I can sell it to you over the next 5 years, and it'll end up costing you $40,000, right? As long as you both agree on a price in the beginning, on one of the two arrangements, then bid'illah ta'ala is permissible. There's nothing haram with that. So people mix this up and think, oh, if they increase the price of something, then that's riba. No, you're selling something. This is trade. You're not loaning money to anybody, right? No one's borrowing money and paying interest on money. You're just simply buying a commodity which is not riba based.
So I can buy a thing that's worth 5,000 by giving 6,000, like upfront, even if I can afford. Let's say I can afford it for 5,000, but there would be some interest involved or something, and I can pay 6,000 and get it right now. Should I pay? Like, can I pay extra money? And buy
Why would they charge if you have 5,000 to buy it now? Why would they might make you pay 6,000 if you can pay?
I'm saying, like, in case of, say, for what was my point? Sorry, forgot. So my point is like something like for example, car companies, they force you, like, if you want to buy a car, you have to get it on finance. They won't, like, some companies, like for Toyota, for example, my friend is searching for a car, so we talked to him yesterday. So they won't allow him to buy a car. If he says that I don't want to pay interest, I can pay 2,000 more, but I don't want to pay interest. I want to buy it, like, directly without financing. They are not allowing him the option.
Oh, so the only option they're giving him is the finance on interest. Yeah, the problem with financing cars on interest is that what's happening with that is that the dealership is selling the car for 30,000, and that's the price tag of the car. And then they say, okay, we're going to finance the car. What happens is that the contract between you is no longer between you and the dealership, it's between the bank now. So the bank technically loans you 30,000 to buy the car, and the bank says, pay me this 30,000 is 40,000 over the next 5 years. That's the problem. If the car was 0% financed, meaning whatever the price tag says 30,000 and you buy for 30,000, then this is halal. What happens in the background is not your issue, because, you know, in the background, yeah, the dealership is getting maybe 25,000, but then the credit union is asking you for 30. But you're buying the car for the price on the price tag, right? But as soon as the bank gets involved and they charge a premium on the money they're lending you, this becomes the problem now, you know? So one thing I can tell you, speaking of cars, because, you know, there's financing and leasing, right? And they say, brother, leasing is also haram because there's interest on leasing. Wait a second, what is leasing? Leasing is you are renting a car for 5 years, and then you can buy it at the end or return it. There's a difference. You're renting a car. If you're renting an apartment, is that riba? No. So in leasing, they might call it interest. And this is the thing you got to be careful of. Not every time they use the word interest, it means riba. When they lease, and I talk about this in the book in detail too, if you're being leased a car, they're going to call it interest and charge an amount over and above whatever, like, amounts they decide to amortize over the lease period, right? But the reality is, what is it in the end? You are renting a car for 5 years. And after the 5 years are up, you may give back the car, say thank you very much, or just say, no, I want to buy the car. Two separate contracts. You're leasing, lease is up, another contract to buy, or I don't want this car, thank you very much, next lease, right? So one thing that some people might do as a way around this problem of financing, because with leasing, you're dealing with a leasing company who owns the car, they're renting you the car directly. You can lease a car and then save in those 5 years and decide, I want to buy it in the end. That's one way to do it. And this is when in Islamic finance, we call this ijara. And even conventional leasing that we have today, it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but you know, there are some clauses here and there, but it's the closest thing to being Sharia compliant as far as financing a car, quote unquote. And we can talk in more detail about that. So like I said, in the book here, I do talk about this in detail. Leasing versus financing. Yeah.
As you mentioned, like some of those halal housing loans and whatnot.
Yeah.
Mortgage. So from what I know, like you borrow like say $500,000 for them. Then they ask you to give $500,000 and 50,000 on top because they are projecting the price as like down the line, like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever the case may be.
For buying the house.
That will be the price of the house. So you just pay us that amount.
Well, what you're talking about sounds like murabaha.
Yeah.
Murabaha is when someone, like right now, what is murabaha? Is when I come and I buy something that you want to buy from me, over an extended period of time. But with murabaha, you know what my cost is. We agree on the markup and the terms, and we go from there. The problem with murabaha is if it's not done very carefully, then it can be something very similar to the interest-based arrangements. For example, let's say you want to buy a house on murabaha. The bank technically is supposed to buy the house and own it, take full risk of it, and then a separate contract should be done to offer you the house, for example. But unfortunately, what ends up happening sometimes with this murabaha thing is that the bank, instead of taking possession of the house, they pay the owner of the house, and the house becomes immediately in your name. It's just something that's written on paper. No, there has to be real trade taking place because you may say, you know what, I don't want this house anymore. I changed my mind. Halas, done. You change your mind, the bank has the house, they're gonna deal with it, and you go your way. And even before, when you first start off and tell them, I want to buy this house, the promise has to be unilateral, meaning it's one promise. You promise to buy the house, and the bank says, well, we'll do our best, we're not going to commit to anything. So we'll see if we can get the house for you. So it's not a bilateral promise, because if you do that, then this becomes like two sales in one. And in the hadith, we have a prohibition of having bay'atayn fi bay'ah. We can't have one trade depending on another trade. So the bank buys the house or buys the commodity, and now you have to basically negotiate a new contract. And that's one method of selling houses with murabaha. There's also what's called musharaka mutanaqisa, declining partnership, where you both enter into a partnership into the house, right? Again, you buy, for example, let's say you pay half the house and the bank pays half the house. You're 50-50 owners. That's one contract. The second contract is, okay, I want to rent this house. It's a separate contract that you shouldn't be forced to do this. If you don't want to rent the house, it's up to you. You and the bank could rent it to somebody else. You don't have to rent it yourself. So if you rent the house and you own half the house, how much rent do you pay? Half, because you own half the house, right? The third contract is, well, you know what? I want to buy shares in this house. So you're paying your rent, but at the same time, if you buy more shares of this house, then that means you own more of the house, so you're paying less rent eventually, until you buy out the entire house. These three contracts have to be separate from each other. You know what I'm saying? So it's a slippery slope. If it's not done right, if they superimpose all three together into one, they say, well, we're buying this as partners, you have to rent it, and you have to buy shares. That's the problem. Now you got three sales in one. You get it? So there are different ones. There's even something called ijara muntahi bit-tamlik, where you rent the house for so many years, and then at the end of it, you can buy the house for a token price. Why is this important? Because renting something isn't like selling. If you're renting a house, the owner of the house is responsible for all the repairs and everything. You're not responsible. You're paying rent for a fully functioning house. The dishwasher breaks, the roof has to be changed. Hey, I don't own this house. You own it, you fix it. Not my problem. When you rent this house for, let's say, 10 years, 15 years, at the end they say, that ijara is done, that rent agreement is done, that lease is done. Now, if you want, you can buy this house for a token price, $50,000, for example, because in that case, it's a separate contract. So as long as contracts don't depend on each other, where this is conditional upon this one, upon that one, and as long as there's real ownership that takes place and real risk happening, then bidnillah ta'ala it is. Now, again, some scholars, like in the Maliki madhab, they don't even like this idea of selling something on a deferred payment basis. They'll even attach the word riba to that. In some ways, they say, oh, someone is just buying, they have money with him, So he just wants to go into the market and buy me the speaker, and then he says, okay, what do you want me to buy for you? And then they buy the speaker, and then they sell it to me for a profit. They're just making money from money. It's a slippery slope. But if someone but the thing is about that is, what does this say about people who have stores? I mean, they're buying stuff for money, and then they're selling it. So Allahu Alam, it's not. And this is where you get to things like bay' al-ina, it's called. This is in the hadith. Bay' al-ina is when you have someone that wants to buy something. So I'm going to buy a car from you for, you have a car you want to sell to me. And I tell you, okay, let's agree on the price. And you say, okay, you know what? $12,000 for the car. We agree. So I owe you $1,000 a month for a year. But then you come back and say, let me buy the car back from you for $10,000. So what happens? I stole you $1,000 a month. You buy the car back, which you sold me for $10,000. I have $10,000 cash with me, and I'm paying $1,000 a month. It's a back door. This is called bay' al-ina, right? Because it's no longer about the commodity; it's about the money now. It's not. We don't care about the car. We're just finding a way to try to find. You know what I'm saying? So there are sometimes you could say slippery slope, tricky business in this respect. That's why I'm saying that banks and things like that, Islamic banks and that, they have work to do. But again, here's the thing, brothers and sisters, they have to understand. And this is something that Mufti Taqi Usmani mentioned. And I like what he said. He said this concept of financial institutions that deal with money for money is foreign to Islam. We don't have this thing about gold and silver or this currency and that currency, riba. We don't have this thing. We have whatever we do in Islamic finance has to be asset backed. It has to be asset backed, meaning we're dealing with real assets or business partnerships. In Islamic financing, you have, for example, a silent partnership called mudaraba. You have shirka, which is an active partnership. You have all kinds of different things that happen there, which are dealing with real profits and losses. This is what Islam is all about: trade and taking risk in trade. Hope that makes sense. But again, there's way more I could say. But again, everything is in the book that I wrote, inshallah. So if anyone is interested, they can have a look at that after. Any others?
Well, I have a question. Assalamu alaikum. I come from India. I'm not sure if this is in practice over here, but then this is in practice back home. Majority of people they are involved in this type of transactions. It's like I own a house and I'm in need of money, so I am leasing my house for some decided amount to him, and we also decide a tenure. I owe this money for, let's say, 5 years, and now he is staying at my house. He's using the house, and he's not paying me any rent. It's just that he gave me a lump sum amount already, and after the decided tenure, if I'm not able to pay back him the amount, then the house is just being owned by him. So
well, the issue with that, the thing that stands out to me, as I mentioned earlier, that any part of any loan that brings a benefit is riba. So if I loan you money on the condition that I live in your house for a year, that's riba.
That's why.
Straight up. Doesn't have to be money, right? Could be just any favor, right?
So as you mentioned about rent, so earlier what used to happen was people used to buy a house or mortgage it, then let people live and then pay them, let the people who are living pay the rent, and they would just transfer.
Yeah.
Now what they are doing is like, let's say the mortgage per month is $400. They are charging $600. 400 goes to the bank, 300 goes to that office. So is it permissible? Because you are still paying.
Yeah.
Not involved. It is still going to mortgage.
Yeah, this is an argument. People say, well, if you don't mortgage a house and you rent the house, it's being mortgaged. You technically pay for the mortgage for the landlord. That's an argument people make. That's a silly argument. I'll tell you why. Because the hadith that we just saw earlier about the Prophet ﷺ cursing the one paying riba, the one taking it, the scribes of the contract and the witnesses there too. This has to do with the contract of riba. You're renting a house from somebody. How he owns the house, how he pays for it is none of your business. Period. Right? You're not assisting him because look, these buildings that you have, these houses that you have, someone's going to live in these buildings at the end of the day. They're going to be paying rent. So you're not part of that contract at all. Because if that was the case, then we should live on the street. No one's going to rent anything from anybody. You're not responsible for that person, how they're buying the house, or that they're financing it, they own it outright. It's not your business. And unfortunately, what happens with some Muslims is they think, oh, well, I'm gonna buy a second house on a mortgage, rent it out, so that I can own it in the end, so I can have two houses. No, that's clearly haram. Because that person is getting into a haram contract in order to somehow secure money for himself or savings in the future. So no, in this case, you're not held accountable for that. You're not. You have nothing to do with it. You're not part of that contract at all. You're just renting a house like anybody else, and that's it.
Well, what are your thoughts or measures that you'd suggest us to minimize the use of credit cards?
Minimize the use of credit cards? Wallahi, akhi, that's a long discussion, but the short of it is every one of us has to basically manage how they spend, generally speaking. Don't try to spend more than your ability. The discipline of being able to save. Here's the problem we have today. The problem with fiat currency, if you compare it with the barter system back then, if I don't need this coat and I need your watch, we just trade. You don't need your watch. Now, you have a $10 bill, $100 bill, you go to the store, it's much easier to spend that and waste it than when you had barter before, because you would not get rid of something you have unless you don't need it. And the other person wouldn't give it to you unless they don't need it. Then you do a barter. But now, the fiat money is very easy to spend. So we have to be very careful how we spend. Right? We have to don't spend more than your ability. We have the advice in the Quran about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us, don't be somebody who's a spender, and don't be somebody who's, like this. Something in between. Don't deprive yourself. But again, if you're in a situation where your income is this much, you spend according to your abilities. Don't go beyond that, right? If you're able to save money, I suggest, and this is something that I mentioned, I think, in the book as well as I think maybe I forgot to mention it today. If you're able to save money and take that cash and buy with it gold and silver coins, like I'm talking real, I can go to the London gold buyer here in London, straight there, transaction with them right there, and then spot transaction, take it and put that gold away. Because if you got gold coins or silver coins, you're not going to go to the store and buy a new TV with it. It's harder to. So you're forced to save. And there's barakah, because it's real intrinsic value money. So that's one way that you can force yourself to save, is as soon as the money, you have extra cash and you put it away, it holds its value with gold. And over time, gold coins and silver coins, they hold their money, their value compared to money. I'll give you an example. What is it, a 1 ounce? Is it a 1 ounce coin? A 1 ounce coin of gold back in 2000, and I'm talking about a Canadian ounce of gold, okay? Back in 2005 was about $500. Now it's reaching almost 3,000. So imagine with me now, if someone back then paid $500 for 10 coins, they had 5,000. If they kept those coins until now, your coin went up in value 500%. So imagine what those coins you bought for 5,000, how much they'd be worth today, right? So this is advice from our grandparents and our grandmothers, and they tell us, dahab, buy gold and put it away. And they're not doing this for no reason. They know what they're talking about, because they know that they've gone through the generation that experienced what happened in 1971, where the money was tied to gold and silver, and now it's tied to air, nothing. You know what I'm saying? So my advice is, if you're able to save money and then put it into gold or silver coins, do it, and then put them away and forget about them. You just have to pay your zakat, obviously, and then it'll force you to save. And with credit cards, akhi, in Egypt, they have an expression, اللي معوش ما يلزموش. Meaning, if you don't have enough money to buy it, you don't need it. Funny expression, but it's true. You can discipline yourself. Do I really need this thing right now? Just get the basic necessities that you need, especially as a student. Your budget is pretty limited right now. Don't go out and don't get yourself into that trap, because credit cards, they're a nightmare. They really are. The interest rates they charge on them are like 20%. And they talk about usury being charging interest more than the legal rates. This is usury and a half with credit cards. It's nuts. So we got to be careful with them.
What do you think or say about insurance? Like car insurance, for example, what the insurance broker or insurance agent does, like they will collect money from 10 people, 10 car owners. Let's say 5 of them met with an accident or something. They already are earning interest on that money. So they put the interest money, and then the money of those 5 car owners who are not met with an accident, to pay for the damages of the 5 people who are met with it. Now, if you are going to, like, say, start something, let's say, for a halal insurance or something, okay, you will still have the same thing, like 5 people met with an accident, 5 didn't.
Yeah,
But to pay for those 5 people, those 5 people's money would not take up. Insurance didn't does
yeah.
it with the help of interest, right?
And
How are you going to solve it?
I'll tell you. There's actually, I don't talk much about insurance in my book, but conventional insurance has been declared by the scholars to be haram for many reasons. Number one, because the money you put into the insurance companies, they invested in interest. So the earnings, like you said, it comes from riba. And also the concept of gharar. Gharar means uncertainty, like extreme uncertainty. So you're paying into something and there's almost like a maisir, it's almost like a bit of a gamble. You don't know if you're going to get anything. Now, the alternative, which I have to still review a little bit more about, is takaful. Takaful, one of the things in it is that people, like you said, they put money together, but whatever money you put in is considered to be tabarruk. It's a donation. You don't expect it back. You all put it into a pool, and if something happens to one of those 10 people, now you're wondering, okay, so what if there's not enough money to cover everybody? That money can be invested in halal types of finance and investments, business partnerships, mudaraba. Things, if you securitize, for example, ijara, leasing certificates, things like that, where you're getting that. So there are ways to build that pool of money in the takaful or the Islamic insurance in order to have enough to pay for people for accidents to happen. There's a whole book on insurance by Muhammad Najatullah Siddiq, I believe. It's not a very long book. I read it a long time ago. I have to review it again, but there are definitely ways around this. Inshallah, there are ways around it. It's not like we're stuck. Now, as far as insurance in the West here is concerned, unfortunately, it's imposed on us. Unlike a mortgage on a house where you voluntarily go and borrow money from the bank, here the insurance, even if you rent a house or an apartment, they force you to see if you don't do insurance on your belongings inside the house, we're not renting you. What are you going to do? In this case, you're compelled and forced, right? So, or cars, for example, is buying a car haram? No, if you do it in the right way, but this is being imposed on the government by you to do this. So this is Allah, it's not something you're going to be blamed for per se, because it's being imposed on you in this case, right? Because how else you drive this car? Someone might say, well, don't get a car. Oh, okay. If you can do that, great. Take the bus.
Like you mentioned, like leaving aside with the insurance, whatever the amount the company is getting from 10 people, let's say they're not actually dealing with interest, or they're not using that amount for interest, and they just have it saved for the purpose of insurance.
Sure. Yeah.
Is it Islamically ethical that, like we mentioned, 5 cars met with an accident and the 5 did not, but all of them paid the same amount over the 1 year.
Yeah.
So is it Islamically ethical to use the amount of the other 5 who did not met with an accident to repair the other 5 who did met with an accident?
So those who paid insurance premiums into an Islamic takaful contract, they paid that money, they never got any benefit out of it, but then other people got into accidents and took all the money. The agreement between the people that put money into a pool, takaful means that you're almost taking care of each other. There's going to be an element of tabarrur, an element of donation, and there's going to be an element of money which belongs to you, which ultimately you might be able to take out later on if you decide to leave the pool, right? So there are different portions of that pool of money. So if for example, you get into an accident and I give you money and help you, that's tabarrur. I'm technically being charitable and helping you out. So on a institutional level, these kinds of companies do the same thing, is that people are together. The money can also be invested to make returns, which they might be able to get as well, returns on the money. But there's an element of it which will be something that we all agree that, it's all there as a trust in case something happens, inshallah, we'll help you out. That's fine. Nothing's wrong with it. Nothing's wrong with it.
So, for example, let's say there's some sort of Islamic insurance company. At the end of the day, no one's going to do it out for charity, right? They will still need staff members, they will still need web portals or something like that to file a claim. They will need a whole system and a whole infrastructure, right? So at the end of the day, it comes like, if I'm doing something like that, I'm not going to invest my whole day, like say 8 hours a day, just doing it for free. I need something, right?
Yes,
to earn something.
Of course you do. And that's why part of the funds that go into the takaful contract would go into like halal investments that would make profits. And nothing is wrong with saying that people that are in that trust together can every year get a return on that money. Nothing wrong with it from the profits that are made, of course. Yeah. 100%.
That would be a better option. As you know, insurance right now, you pay the money, you forget about it. You don't get it back.
That's right.
Unless you get back into an accident, then that's it.
Yeah.
You don't need to an accident, drive carefully, you're not gonna get it back.
Oh yeah, you might be paying insurance all your life and you get absolutely nothing out of it. And then when the time comes for you to get your money, they'll put you through a ride before they give you anything. You have to fight them to get your money.
Yeah.
To get reimbursed for your car being. And there are many people that I'm sure you know people that they got into an accident and then the insurance companies are giving them a hard time and they got to prove that they paid this and this to get money. It's a very unjust system. Like insurance companies, I think they're even more rich than banks. They're even worse than banks. But of course, they deal with interest as well because your money goes into, that kind of thing.
So, as you said, makes a pool where everyone helps each other out, right?
Yeah, they put into a pool to help each other out. Again, I didn't write in detail about this topic. I have to review it more, but I just gave you the bits and pieces that I remember. But there are books on this topic.
So, as you mentioned, like, if you're doing it like from DD or any other insurance companies, you're basically giving them the money and forget. You don't know if it's going to be used for interest, if it's going to be used for.
Yeah, you don't know. Yeah.
If you have an Islamic alternative, you at least know it's going to be used in halal investments or to help someone.
That's right.
It's not going to be used for interest, right?
Yeah, the conventional insurance, definitely they're going to invest it in insurance,
Yeah.
in interest-bearing securities. Yeah, 100%.
Permissible, I guess, I don't think it's the right word, but can you make a contract or say like, okay, we'll be keeping your money in case you need it, but if someone else needs it, you are not going to get it back.
Yeah, if you agreed on that, then that's that in and of itself, nothing's wrong with that. Like we're putting money together into a pool to help each other out.
Yeah, because you are going to pay money for insurance for TD anyways, and they are going to use it instead use it in the Islamic word where
that's right.
Each other up, right?
Oh yeah, if you tweak it around, then inshallah it can be Sharia compliant, and it exists. And unfortunately, because of the way that the political arena we have today with the Muslim countries and this, like. And you can't, and I mentioned this in the book, you can't divorce economics from politics. Unless the Muslim governments uphold Sharia properly. I mean, trying to create Islamic alternatives to the riba system is very difficult because you have to have political support. Countries have, and the thing I talk about is that Muslims should, and this is something that was mentioned already, I think after the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, I think the president of Indonesia was one of them. He was saying we should go back to the gold standard. The Muslim countries, that we should have our own like gold-backed currency. Forget about the West. This financial system is imposed on us, and this is one of the reasons why the West is ahead, is because they've exploited the world with the system that they have today. Whether it's the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund or whatever, when you go into that deeply, you realize, yeah, they have us by the neck because of this. So they've imposed it. This fiat system has been imposed on us. Why should we go with that? If we want Muslim unity between governments, I think one of the first steps is to have a currency that's shared between all of us. Because that's very powerful, right? To have our own like Muslim currency that is backed by, OPEC right now. I mentioned this in the book, like, the oil producing, exporting countries, they're being ripped off. We're giving them petroleum, we're giving them oil for fake money. What is that? Allah. And if you think about that, why? It's there.
Well, talking about credit cards, what if you're using it just as a mode of payment? Like I have a credit card.
Me too.
Sorry.
Me too. I have one.
Yeah. So I've been using it for a year now, and alhamdulillah, like I never had to pay any interest. So I make sure like I use it regularly, and I paid back right away.
Yeah.
So. But yet, still, like you mentioned, that we are still in a contract, right? That if at all I am not able to pay, then I am still in a contract that I'll be paying so much more or something like that.
Yeah, with a credit card,
I did make sure that I never had to pay any interest.
Yeah, me too. I the same thing with my credit card. I don't remember myself ever paying any interest ever. But like you said, the reality is it's still a contract and we're still agreeing to it. So Allah Alam, like we should just not use it unless we absolutely have to. And that's the answer. And actually today, if I'm not wrong, there is something out there where they have these preloaded credit cards. I haven't looked into it yet. Some people have forwarded me information about it. But if we have preloaded credit cards where you can actually load it with money yourself, your own money, and use it for transactions with credit cards, then there's hardly a reason to have any conventional credit card now. And inshallah, like I'm gonna look into it soon myself, because I answered this question, I think last year, and I gave them the answer. But
the one we or like spend some money on it, and it's basically actual credit card. Like if you put $25, you can use that $25 as a credit card, and
that's the one. I forget the name. I think it's I forget what it's called now, but I think to be honest, Menzil in Canada here, they promote that one. And the website, I think I saw it. I have to read it. But yeah, if there's, like you said, if it's a credit card in the sense that you put money on there and it's your own money that you're using for credit card transactions, then, and of course, there's Visa debit. You know what that is, right? I mean, that I use that all the time for online transactions. I don't even touch my credit card. Either.
So regarding the credit card, let's say, since you mentioned, I remember it, like, okay, let's say I have 5 days to pay the money, like to pay the credit card amount, which and I don't have the money. In that case, would it be permissible to borrow it from someone so as to avoid interest on the credit card?
Yeah, if you can borrow, if somebody would loan you money interest free and you can pay the credit card off and clean it out, yeah, I do that. Because in this case, like you're getting a halal loan to get rid of a haram loan. I do that. Yeah, I do that. May Allah make it easy. It's not easy. I know. I've been in Canada since 1987. I was 11 years old when we came here. So I mean, I've lived those years until now, and I've seen the transition in terms of finance and that. It's not easy. Saving money in this country is not easy. It's very difficult unless you really discipline yourself and and if you get into your own like business and self-employment, that's when you can start really saving money better. But if as long as you're going to be employed all your life, you're not going to move ahead very well. They'll have you by the neck like this.
I have 2 more questions. If you
Oh, I might have to charge a riba on this. Maybe in the form of lunch after. I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Abhi.
So first thing was like, people invest in share market and all whatnot.
Stock market?
Yeah. So that is some people say it's a way, it's like sort of gambling, right? So is it permissible to do that?
Well, okay, you can check islamkuwait.info. They have a lot of articles on this. I'm not going to give an opinion about it. I've read different things and I still have to look into it, but with certain conditions, it becomes permissible, but you have to be careful with the gambling aspect, or sometimes the shares aren't even like in your possession and you just start trading it like things on the screen without even being yours.
Basically like people.
Like derivatives and things, yeah.
So
more or less.
Is it the same with the cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, where the coin is not actually a coin, it's just an imaginary one, and you're buying it,
yeah,
and its value is increasing, like with leaps and bounds.
Well, cryptocurrency to me is not much different than fiat currency. I mean, it's still something which is not backed by anything real. I don't have an opinion about cryptocurrency. I've seen scholars say different things, but to say haram about something, you have to be sure 100% that it's haram. I mean, even some scholars said even fiat currency is haram, but they haven't really given any strong proof for that. We could say that it's not good to have fiat currency because it makes riba more possible, and it also is a way of ripping people off. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the realm of Shu'aib alayhi salam, وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُم, don't short people of their belongings. Well, fiat currency does that in the form of inflation. Because if there's inflation, what's your currency worth now? It's going to get worse and worse. So your savings are going to be. That's why I say gold and silver, brother. Gold and silver. Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question, which I already know the answer to, but just so that our audiences are well aware of this. Can you please talk about the conditions for buying gold and silver? Because there are different methods of buying them today.
Oh, gold and silver. Yeah, Jazakumullah khair. So what are the conditions for buying gold and silver? I didn't talk about this in my presentation because I discussed riba al-fadl in here. Riba al-fadl is the riba that has to do with, if I want to translate it literally, it's riba of preference, okay, or exceeding something else. And this is in trade. So, for example, when it comes to currency exchanges, you might have heard about the hadith about the 6 riba commodities before: gold, silver, barley, salt, dates, and wheat. Rasulullah mentioned those 6, and he said the summary of it is that if you're trading gold for silver, right, it has to be, gold for gold, silver for silver. If these are identical, they have to be done on the spot right now, and they have to be exactly the same. Why would somebody trade gold that's exactly the same? Because sometimes you might have a new coin, old coin, the weight has to be the same. But if you're trading silver to gold or dollars to gold or whatever, rupees to silver, the condition is that it has to be a spot transaction. It has to hand to hand. There's no delay. There's no nasi'a. Because I talked about nasi'a earlier about delay. The delays are not allowed. Okay. So if you, for example, go to buy gold and silver, you have to do it right there and then. You agree with the person on the counter, You do the exchange and you're done. You don't say, well, let me go to the car. No, right there, you forget about it. You come back in again because, gold fluctuates. Every second it fluctuates. So this is where you have to make sure that it's done on the spot. And again, I talk about the Slib al-Fadl thing in my book in detail. So inshallah, hopefully you can have a look at that and get some benefit from it.
So further going along with that comment, some people can buy gold and silver online. What is the?
Yeah, buying gold and silver online is a problem because, you're buying it, but by the time it gets to you, it doesn't happen on the spot. Like if you're buying it and it's going to be shipped over to you, the hand-to-hand, the yad and biyad is that condition is not fulfilled. So it's not a permissible transaction. And the reason why that's prohibited is because Ribā al-Fadl, as Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned, rahimahullah, is a doorway to Ribā al-Nasiyah. Some people might try to say, well, we're just doing trade, gold for gold. I'll just charge you a little bit, and then I'm going to delay. No. Then you're getting into this thing where it might lead to people taking a back door to get away with Ribā al-Nasiyah, which is Ribā al-Mawz. But again, I get into that in detail. This side, I haven't heard any questions. Hold on.
I was saying about the gold. If we are buying the gold online, but if they are not shipping it to us, they are storing it over there. If we are buying it and they are storing it. For storing that service, they're going to charge you some money.
Okay, so you're buying it online, but they're storing it for you?
Yeah, and they are charging some money for it.
Well, if they're charging you money for that, that's just a service fee. It's like the bank charging you a service fee on safety deposit box. But again, with buying it online and all that, I'd be very careful to make sure that it does happen on the spot.
Like it's buying shares actually. Basically, like shares, but they are charging some money.
Yeah, even if you're buying like.
Yeah, I have researched a while back. So I don't remember the exact details. I have to look at it.
Yeah, so sometimes what happens is you're buying shares in a company that deals in gold, right? And they're doing gold mining and stuff. Even though you're buying a share, it still has to meet the condition of hand-to-hand transaction, spot transaction, because the shares are backed by currency, basically. So whereas normally with shares, if it's not like that, the delivery of the share could be delayed. But if it's something that represents cash or silver or gold, the transaction has to be a spot transaction. I'll take a couple more questions if anybody else. You guys, one more question. Okay, one more. Oh, yeah, you know what? You're right. You're right. One last one, and then we'll see if there's anyone there.
So, as you mentioned, for the halal insurance thing, so it might be possible to implement a banking system as well based on those principles. It would be, for as long as an Islamic bank is concerned, I'm thinking it's just something where you can keep your money and you can just take it wherever you want. Like, let's say you are here, you put your money in the bank, you go somewhere, like say 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers, you can still take.
Yeah.
There would be no savings account, there would be no interest. It's just a place to keep money. That's what I understand halal banking.
Yeah, it's safekeeping, and halal Islamic banking also. I mean, it has deposits which are like that, where you just take out money and put it back in. But then there's also accounts which would be represented by business partnerships. So the bank will have funds, for example, set aside to do a silent partnership or an active partnership, and then the profits that are made from that are passed over to you.
Okay, so,
And that's based on profits, no problem.
and as far as like buying gold is concerned, there is also the thing like you can't just save something and just buy gold, right? You have to take the Zakat and all everything that into account as well. Is it like?
Yeah, gold, you have to pay zakat on gold.
Yeah.
You do. You look at, and as long as you're above that threshold, or what we call it in zakat nisab, if a year passes on that, then you got to pay the 2.5% on that. And then, whether it's gold, silver, currency, I think they even mentioned that stocks are included too, things like that, investments, RSPs, if somebody's got money sitting in there, even though it's not in their pocket, it's still their wealth, everything.
As you mentioned stocks, but stocks, the thing is with stocks is like, stocks, the company's major like CEOs or whatnot, they don't take salary because that's taxable income. Stocks, in the other hand, they are not taxable.
Yeah, well, stocks, no, they are taxable.
Some of them are.
No, if you're working as an employee for a company, you're talking about instead of getting paid a salary, you get stock options to buy stocks. No, they're taxable. And this is something we study in tax as well.
Okay.
As an employee, you have a stock option, and then you buy stocks, and if the stock goes up in value after you buy it, that difference between the two is a capital gain. You pay tax on that, and eventually, if you sell it, there's also tax on that. So no, it is taxable.
It is.
Yeah, it is taxable.
And as far as buying the board is concerned, you have to do it after you do like the basic 5 pillars are done. Like the words are done first, right? You have given Zakat, you have given what do you call it? You have performed. After that, you can start investing or savings, right?
With savings, like, you're saving now because you do want to go to Hajj, right? That's the point. So when you're saving now to put money away, the intention is when I'm able to afford it and I have the time and energy and whatever, then I'm going to do my Hajj and so on. So, yeah, so for me, like, if I'm saving now is because my intention is to go to Hajj, inshallah, one day. And then after that, when I'm back from Hajj, I'll keep saving, inshallah.
What's your opinion on I've heard people, they even plan and there are people who have gone for Hajj on loans.
On loans?
They borrow amount and they go for Hajj.
Well, to be honest, Allah says whoever is able to do it. So the way I take it is that you have to be the one that can afford it. To borrow money to go to Hajj, I don't know. I don't feel good about that. I'm not sure. I'm not going to see if it's haram or not to do or makruh or something, but it's clear that you have to be financially able to do it. And to borrow money to do it, you're not financially able because you have to borrow from somebody else. You don't have the money. Allahu A'lam. I could be wrong on this one. Okay, you guys reached your quota. You have to give a chance on that side. We'll take maybe three more questions, and then we'll end, inshallah. And afterwards, if you want to see me after, inshallah, we can talk. Don't worry. Hold on.
We did mention Manzil, which is supports moving towers according to evolving the future one. So, what are your advices in working towards owning a home? Okay.
You're talking about home ownership, like owning a home one day?
How can we work towards that?
How can you work towards that? Well, like I said, there are organizations like Manzil and others that do it, but the waiting list and the price and that, it's difficult. I want to tell you something about that. Like alhamdulillah, I've been renting since 2005, since I got married. I never felt in my life that I was throwing my money out because I felt like I was getting something for what I'm paying. And alhamdulillah, Allah guided me not to fall into the trap of mortgages like most people did. And I'm, my mind is serene. I'm content. Alhamdulillah, I'm saving slowly, right? Is it an aim in my mind that, I have to own a house before I leave this world? No, I don't look at it that way. If I can afford a house one day, alhamdulillah, great. If I can't, alhamdulillah. Your investment in this world is your children more than anything else. I'm telling you. Because if you have good children, you get older, inshallah, they will start working. Even if you're somebody who's still renting in old age, they'll help you out. And they'll make dua for you when you pass away. So this is the best investment. So it's not like if you don't own a house, you failed. It's not like that. And plus, with the ownership comes responsibility. Like right now, I've been renting this house I'm in right now. Alhamdulillah, I've been renting it since March 2020. I can't tell you the amount of money this guy paid to fix the house. Like I could not afford that. He had to change this machine, that one, fix this. I'm like, man. And I think that at one point, like he was just thinking of forgetting about this whole thing because it cost him a lot. So there's a lot of stuff that comes in. The property tax you have to pay, and plus when you're renting, it's more flexible. Like if you find a job in a different city, you just pack up and go. And so there's a lot of advantages to it, And plus, if someone saves like let's say $200,000-300,000 or something, they're better off investing that in business, not in residential. I'm telling you, it's way better to invest in business. Like if someone has $1 million, let's say, or has $700,000, they're better off buying a small piece of land and renting it out to people who are going to have like a business or a store. That's much less headache than residential. Residential is a huge headache, in general. Whether it's the one that's renting out to people or the one who's, owning or whatever, it's a lot of headache, and you don't get much out of it. And houses, business is always the way. So, yes, it's nice to aim and dream about it, inshallah, that I want to one day save and stuff like that, but it's not the end of it. Don't make it seem like if you cannot buy a house that you failed in life. It's not like this at all. Yeah. Go ahead.
So, like sometimes banks in credit has like you could like send some products.
If they send you money on your credit card?
The savings.
Oh, interest. That money, keep track of it. Give it to the masjid and tell them this is money from interest. And then they'll take care of it. They'll know how to allocate it. Now, there are accounts you can, like the banks do have accounts that don't pay any interest at all. Like I got checking accounts, I don't get a penny of interest on it. But if you get interest, that money needs to be cleaned out of your money. Yeah, so donate it to the masjid or whoever and tell them this is from interest. And the masjid here on Oxford Street, I remember when I did some volunteer work for them at one point in their accounts, and they called that black money. They had an account for it, they put it there, and then they were able to channel it in ways which, which we don't have to do, for example, with food and drink. Because when people eat and drink, it should be from halal sources. So maybe they might spend it on infrastructure or on things which are lowly, like things that are cleaning supplies or things like that. But yeah, you shouldn't keep that money at all. You should get rid of it. No. Jazakumullah khairan. If anyone's interested to have a look at the book, if you're interested, honestly, like on Amazon, it's selling for 20 US. I'm selling it for 20 Canadian today. I'll sign it for you, inshallah. And I want you to read it and I want your feedback on it. Jazakumullah khairan. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
What's the mode of payment for the book?
Gold and silver. You had to ask that question, eh? Well, cash, or we can do it where you can pay by e-transfer. It's up to you. Not credit card. Don't do it. Jazakallah khair.